What thing did your parents do that you thought was normal? Growing up, we never went to Dairy Queen. We would instead buy a case of ice cream bars at the grocery store and sit in the car eating them. Family of 5, 24-pack. You got however many you could eat or they were all melted or gone. Fast forward to one of my older sister's first dates with her now husband. He suggested they go out for ice cream. She was driving, so they went to a grocery store. At this point he's thinking, okay, we're going to get it and head back to the apartment. They check out and head to the car. Trying to impress her, he opens the door for her and lets her in, then walks around the car. By the time he sits down, she's on bar number 3. He told us this story recently for the first time. We had never really thought it was odd growing up, but our respective spouses reacted the same way he did that day.
Seems like a unique family tradition with the ice cream bars. It's interesting how something normal for one family can feel unusual to someone outside it. The date story adds a funny twist to it, especially with her just diving into the ice cream. It's cool to see how little moments can have a lasting impact on others' perspectives.
Got a few, hanging around naked at both the house and my grandmother's, along with the rest of my very naked family, never letting their kids have time off, having us always away on camp, school, extra classes, and for me, physical rehabilitation, even on weekends. Eating out every weekend, almost always to a different restaurant. Having both a nanny and a maid. Raising and training dogs. Survival and weapons training as an optional for their children, I took both. Hunting trips with my dad were always awesome. Having friend families, basically a family with kids within our age range, so we could go out on family trips, both families together. Having a violent schizophrenic mother. Domestic violence from the mother side. A supportive and kind father. Happy face edit, happy face spelling.
This story touches on a mix of experiences. There are some normal family activities alongside more serious issues like domestic violence and mental health struggles. It's interesting how a family can have both supportive and challenging dynamics. Each point paints a complex picture of life that's not uncommon in some households. It shows a range of childhood experiences, from fun outings to difficult situations.
Post-divorce, my dad dated a series of meth addicts, went bankrupt, and went to jail for failure to make child support payments. I wasn't really aware of most of it at the time, but I do remember feeling very guilty and upset once when I was very young, 5 to 6 at most, and I suddenly realized that I had completely forgotten that I had a dad. Now I realize that I likely went months without seeing him and that my mom just didn't say anything about it, so I wasn't really at fault. But I felt like a terrible daughter, and I think I still project a lot of that onto my relationship with him now. I'm always so sure he's disappointed in me or I'm letting him down by not going out of my way to spend time with him and make him happy, which can be pretty impossible. It sucks. It wasn't even until the last year or so that I realized what a train wreck of a dad he was at that time. I grew up just thinking he didn't show up most of the time, but at least he seemed like a good person.
That's a heavy situation. It's tough to navigate feelings from childhood, especially when you later understand the full context. The guilt you felt is understandable, but it's important to remember that it wasn't your fault. Relationships can be complicated, especially with someone who has their own struggles. It might help to focus on your own feelings and what you need, rather than projecting the past onto your current interactions.
I wasn't allowed to have friends over or be home alone. Ever. When my mom cleaned, I had to sit in a chair in another room and not touch anything until she was done. This was daily. I also couldn't walk on the vacuum lines in carpeted rooms. Or sit on the couch. She bathed me till I started my period at 12 because you won't clean yourself right. Then I was forced to tiptoe to my room so my feet wouldn't get dirty. I wasn't allowed to sleep with my bedroom door closed. She had my grandmother babysit me till I was 16. I was not allowed to do extracurricular activities through school, and when I did I had to fund it myself, even in junior high. Related side note, yes, I've been to therapy.
That sounds like a pretty strict upbringing. It's clear there were a lot of rules and restrictions. The no friends over and constant supervision must have made things tough. It's good to hear you've sought therapy. Those experiences can shape how you see things later. It's interesting to reflect on how those rules affect you now.
My mom and stepdad were hoarders. When I was young I always knew we lived differently than other people, but it never bothered me. As I became a teenager I started getting embarrassed and wouldn't have friends over / envied my friends for their normal living situation. They hoarded random shit like empty boxes and newspapers. We had an extra bedroom stacked to the ceiling with boxes of junk. We also had 11 cats and a dog. As an adult, I'm far from a hoarder. I moved out at 18 and never looked back.
It's interesting how living situations can shape our perspectives. Growing up in a chaotic environment might make you appreciate simplicity more. It's good to hear that you found your own way and moved on from that. Dealing with embarrassment in your teenage years is pretty relatable. Now that you're an adult, it seems like you've made a clear break from that lifestyle.
Well, I think it's more of what they had already done. By the time I was born, they had a pretty good-sized house and it was paid off, along with a good chunk of surrounding land, 2 cars that were paid off, decent income, and to this day they always keep fully stocked fridge and kitchen cabinets, as well as keep it relatively clean and tidy. My best friend, I'd see her at her grandma's house, which was the same situation as ours. Fast forward to 5th grade, I go over to a friend's house, tiny, many rooms, but besides the kitchen and living room they were about the size of 2 or 3 coat closets, fridge and cabinets nearly empty, and the house is a mess. I don't remember how I felt, but my mom says she remembers how I came home all stunned, saying stuff like, their house. It was filthy. And small. Small. Wow. Gave me a new outlook on the way I was raised, and made me feel very grateful.
It's interesting how experiences shape your perspective. Growing up in a stable environment can make you appreciate what you have. That moment at your friend's house probably highlighted the differences in living situations. It's good you came away with a sense of gratitude. Sometimes, seeing other people's realities can open your eyes to your own blessings, even if you don't realize it right away.
My mom's an extremely creative person, and when I was little she used to call certain things by different names she made up. For example, instead of calling my butt a butt, she called it my buka, bouquet. There were many more exciting terms she made up, but that one in particular stands out. It might have something to do with the fact that I almost got into a fist fight when a kid told me that my buka was called a butt and I didn't know anything. Who knew a kid in kindergarten could be such a pain in the buka? Anyways, my mother still continues the tradition of renaming things and it's quite entertaining.
That's an interesting take on creativity in language. It's cool how your mom made up words that stuck with you. Sounds like you had a memorable experience with that. It's nice to have those lighthearted connections.
Like my entire childhood. My parents are junkies. I thought that the cops coming over all the time was normal. I also thought that dragging my passed out father off of the neighbor's lawn and shit was normal. Along with violence and the like. Like we once had a guy come and threaten dad with a sawn-off shotgun and me and my brother were like, cool story. Just another day in the Miller's household. It wasn't until I actually made friends in high school that I found out it wasn't normal. I'm always the person at parties with the crazy stories.
This is a heavy story. Growing up in such a chaotic environment looks like it shaped your perspective on life. It's interesting how what seems normal in one setting can be completely different elsewhere. Things like violence and substance use often get normalized, but it's tough to see that until you have a different frame of reference. Sounds like you've got a lot to share from those experiences.
Kisses on the mouth. My mom gave all of us kids, me, the only girl, and 3 brothers, kisses on the mouth until we got old enough to realize not all families did this. For most of us that was around age 18. My husband, boyfriend at the time, had to tell me it was unusual. The kisses were just pecks and never given with malicious or sexual intent, more along the lines of, this is how I show you I love you when we are greeting and saying goodbye to each other. Never knew it was weird. For the record, we are a pretty standard family in the US who never lived anywhere that kisses were regularly exchanged in common culture apart from our family.
What feels normal in one family can seem unusual to others. Kissing on the mouth for greetings and farewells is definitely personal. It sounds like it was just a way to express love in your family. A lot of people probably have their own customs that they see as normal too. It's all about what feels comfortable in each family setting.
Maybe not unusual, I certainly hope not, but my parents were nice to the people I had over, offered snacks, a ride if it was late, sometimes picking stuff up at the store if they knew they were coming over so they had stuff to drink and snack on. Only one of my friend's parents did this. Some would get angry if you had a cookie from the cookie jar. Some made it obvious you were not wanted around by banning certain activities like using the TV or game console until you left. We were in our teens, not troublemakers either. Thankfully I take off my parents and try to be a good host if ever I have company or my roommate has people over.
It's cool to hear your parents were welcoming. It's weird how some parents can be so strict or not friendly. Your approach to hosting sounds like a nice way to create a comfortable atmosphere for everyone.
Jarie eggs. At Easter, my parents would hard-boil eggs with red onion skins in the water, so the egg shells would go a pleasing shade of brown. Then on Easter Sunday we would sit down, pick an egg each, and take turns bashing the ends of them against our opponent's eggs. The winner was the one with the unbroken egg. My dad always cheated by practically covering the entire egg with his big meaty hands, the filthy cheat. First time my wife came over to my parents for Easter, she looked at us like we were deranged yokels.
Sounds like a pretty typical family tradition. Using onion skins for color is interesting, though. Bashing eggs is a fun little game, even if your dad cheats. It's funny how new people react to family quirks. I guess she had to get used to it, just part of the whole experience.
This thread has made me realize, despite all of the divorces and shit, my parents were pretty normal and did a good job. If I had parents like some of these people had, I feel like I'd have ended up being in prison by now. I'm going to brag about the good things about my parents instead. One time, in first grade, my dad made me wear overalls with Tigger on them and I was embarrassed, so I told the class about the time he shit his pants in a public park. My teacher brought it up when he came to pick me up and everyone laughed their ass off. He also talked to me like I had the mental capacity of an adult when I was a kid, and I think that really helped me mature my way of thinking growing up. He taught me what the difference between wisdom and knowledge, he talked to me about man and God, Christian teachings and philosophy, etc. I'm not a Christian anymore, but it has given me another perspective. He was always really generous to friends, family, strangers, and most of all, me. Hell of a man, hardest worker I know, but sometimes he tries too hard though, holy shit. I can't complain about my mom, she's cool as fuck. Got her bachelor's while working full-time with a husband and 2 young kids. She is what most feminists wish they were, total alpha.
It's interesting how different experiences shape our views on parenting. Seems like your parents gave you a solid foundation. That balance of humor and seriousness can impact a kid's growth. Your dad sounds like a good role model, even if he had some embarrassing moments. And it's impressive that your mom managed to juggle education and family. You've got some real respect for them, which is nice to see.
I have suspected my biological father is schizophrenic for some time now. He used to hoard money in places throughout the house. He also insisted on teaching his daughters, me and my sister, how to use, disassemble, clean, and reassemble firearms before we were 10 years old. He made sure we knew how to hunt, track, and field dress an animal by around age 10 also. Related to this, he would take us out to the middle of the woods by our house and leave us alone. We would have to find our way back without help or a compass as a survival skill. He also taught us some more normal things like how to plant and take care of a garden. He liked science a lot, so he would teach us a lot about different science topics too. I remember being pretty young when he told me how the Earth and our solar system is made of the remnants of an old dead star that exploded a few billion years ago. That kind of blew my mind. I lost touch with him when I was about 12. I learned a lot from him. He was a paranoid, militant atheist, but I miss him a lot. Now my stepdad is my dad. We have a much more conventional relationship based on love and kindness rather than knowledge and fear.
It sounds like you had a complicated relationship with your biological father. He taught you some useful survival skills, but also had some unconventional views. Losing touch must have been tough, especially with those memories. It seems your stepdad provides a different kind of support, which can be nice after such an intense experience. Balancing those past lessons with your current life must be interesting.
While growing up, my best friend's family loved to fight. Not so much each other, but bar fights that often involved other entire families, and was pretty much treated like the chicken fighting scenes on the Family Guy, where nobody seems to react to the fact that such a thing is happening in front of them and continue on as if nothing had happened when it's over. I came from an upper-middle-class uber-Caucasian family and spent as much time as I could with this family instead. Oddly enough, for having grown up in this environment, my best friend has never been in a fight.
It's interesting how different family dynamics can shape our upbringing. The contrast between your background and your best friend's experiences is striking. It's funny to think about those bar fights being like a scene from a cartoon, where chaos is just part of the norm. Your friend's choice to stay away from fighting despite that environment adds an unexpected twist to the story. Life can be pretty surprising that way.
Parents are first-gen immigrants. So everything. Both my parents will sometimes bathe by filling the tub with 2 inches of water and splashing themselves while squatting in the tub. Apparently North Americans don't boil milk. My parents always did. My mom scared us about eating more than 2 eggs a day, that to this day none of my siblings will ever eat more than 2 eggs in a day for any reason. My brother's first hockey practice was in a soccer uniform with pads on the outside. First time I heard about double dipping, I thought that it was joke. Never heard about complaining about hair in your food. You have food for GDS sake. Never knew hand-me-down underwear were weird. Throwing out food is unheard of. My mom won't wish you luck for an exam, but she will yell shit out the window really loud till your classmates think that you're nuts. When I drive somewhere, my mom calls all her friends to find out who wants a lift with me. Or ask strangers to drive me somewhere. Complete strangers. Best part of all this, only thought of this recently, but my mom's from Paris. She may be an immigrant, but Canada is the backwaters compared to Paris. But she still acts crazy FOB.
This captures a lot of the cultural differences. The way your parents approach simple things like bathing and cooking shows their unique background. It's interesting how some practices, like boiling milk or not throwing out food, are ingrained habits. The hand-me-down underwear bit is relatable, and the way your mom supports you in her own loud way is kind of funny. Immigrant experiences often highlight these quirky contrasts in everyday life.
I didn't realize that not every family of 4 bought all things in absolutely massive sizes. We didn't just buy sugar, we bought a 15-pound bag of sugar. We didn't have cans of tomato sauce, we had gallon cans of tomato sauce. My parents actually designed their kitchen to neatly store and hide the 10-gallon buckets of flour, dried black beans, oatmeal, and the like. We had what we called the $1.88 rule, which meant we could only buy cereal if it was under $1.88, which is rare. So when my dad found it for that price, he would buy all the cereal in the store. It would last us years. I didn't realize this behavior was weird until my boyfriend came over to make dinner with me one night and freaked out when I showed him where the flour was. He'd never seen that much flour in one place. Apparently buying all food items from industrial suppliers is not normal for an upper-middle-class 4-person family.
Seems like your family had a different approach to grocery shopping. Buying in bulk definitely isn't the norm for most people. It's interesting how your boyfriend reacted, shows how varied household experiences can be.
My dad has OCD. I don't live with him anymore, so I don't know whether he still does all the little things he used to when I was growing up or not, but when I was a kid he used to lock, unlock, and relock any door that required locking 3 times. He also operated light switches multiple times, but with that he also would inhale sharply and audibly and hold his breath while he switched a light on and off. I inherited some of his OCD, though mine has manifested in a different way, so I don't really consider these things weird, but I suppose they are since most people don't hold their breath while turning a light on or off.
That's an interesting take on OCD. It shows how it can vary from person to person. Your dad's habits seem pretty unique, and it's kind of relatable that you've inherited some of it. Everyone has their quirks, and it sounds like you understand and accept them. At least you recognize it as part of who you are, rather than something to be ashamed of.